I really wish this was clickbait, but here we go. Hey, what's going on? Atiba here, and I'm going to be doing a review on Bicycle Richmond. Originally I wasn't going to say anything about Bicycle, but after hearing many times I wasn't the only one, I thought I'd inform others. Like many people, I chose Bicycle because of certain people on YouTube, and also from a friend who previously had a fit there. So I thought I'd go based on those factors. And also, why am I hiding names? Most people will know it's Francis Cade and obviously Bike Fit James. I purchased a pair of shoes and handlebars from them in the past, but the experience is okay. But we're talking about the bike fit, not my shoes. Saying that, one thing that was a bit weird that I didn't notice, if you book a shoe fit with them and try out shoes, they force you into buying G8s. Which is not saying you don't need arch support, but cutting the insoles down and forcing someone into buying them is a bit sus. This is not the first bike fit I've had, and I've played around with my numbers over time. But I came in for a fit, like many people, because I had pain of some kind. A few days before my fit, I called up to ask if I could bring in my trek bike, just to check if my saddle was in the right place. I was told it was okay, and if they had time, they'd have a look at it. Bear in mind, I didn't have many issues on the track bike to the road bike, but I felt the saddle position was slightly off. I had a fit with Andy Fenn. Doing a bit of research online, he was an ex-pro road racer, so I'll let you be the judge of that. The fit wasn't done by James, but it was under the same umbrella as he owns a shop and trains his fitters. I got to the shop early. With Bicycle, you have to ring a bell for someone to let you in. Andy answers and I introduce myself. I don't pay much attention, but there is some judgment in terms of body language. And I'm not sure if it was because I was with two bikes or both bikes had long stems. I tried to ignore the judgment. Usually when you get a fit, they'll ask you some details about you, like age, what you do for a living, issues on the bike and goals and all that good stuff. Once they get the interview out of the way, it's time for the physical assessment. This is to check your limitations. So apparently I had poor flexibility, which at the end of the fit I was like, fair enough. Although looking back through the report, it said nothing about it. I also can't really remember if or how they checked for my flexibility. They did check my hip rotation, which you could say is one way of measuring flexibility. But again, hip flexibility is only one part of the puzzle when regarding flexibility on the bike. Hey, future Atiba speaking. So I did look properly through the fit numbers, and for some weird reason I seem to miss how they measured my flexibility. So they measured my flexibility by a forward hip hinge, and they rated it a 6. I'm not sure if it's 6 out of 10 or 6 out of 100. It sounds like the latter based on the fact that they said my flexibility was poor. So we'll say that it's poor. But I'll put in a clip right now of an example of my flexibility, and you could be the judge on that. So back to the video. Once the physical assessment was done, they take the measurements from your bike and they get you on the adjustable jig. What they never told me was that the jig over-exaggerates issues on the bike, because the jig is really stable. So the first thing I noticed is that I had a lot of hand pressure on the jig, which is something I never got until then. They get you to ride on the jig for a bit and then ask you what you notice. He tells me I'm way too aggressive, which he made the assumption when he saw my bikes. On the pressure mapping software, all the pressure was showing at the front of the saddle, which I should make a video on comfort because I think the media oversimplifies the definition of comfort when it comes to bike setups. I am happy I only came with my road bike and didn't let them look at everything on my track bike, but we'll get to my track bike later. So I'm told to get off the bike and he measures my inseam to get estimate saddle height. I seem to be in range. He's seen that my saddle height was going to be too high, which was fine. Surprise, surprise. It's like I've had a bike fit before. He adjusts my cleats and moves them back and then lowers the saddle height to compensate. So during the fit, it's supposed to be based on feedback from the rider. So they require your input. But the idea is that you and the fitter work out a position together. So if you have a fit, there should be something you should at least learn about yourself. And honestly, I did not learn a thing. Example, before I had my first bike fit, I knew I had long legs and a short torso. But what I didn't know is that I also had long arms too, which for what I needed and what I was experimenting with in the past has to being a game changer in my knowledge. So my definition of comfort is the absence of pain, and my position might have looked aggressive, but for my body type and my range of motion, I'm always going to be in a more aggressive position. But saying that, I never considered my position to ever be aggressive. I was told I was always going to get an aggressive setup by a fitter the first time I had a bike fit. Although this was before bicycle, by the way. Way before. The first red flag should have been about my TT/kilo position. Bear in mind, I have been aero tested by Watchshop. However, after hearing that a kilo position should be in a certain way, copying certain people, and again, being told it's way too aggressive, as quoted by James, I should have run out the shop screaming.
Run out screaming. And then when he asked why did you do that, say, Bikefit James told me to.
Spoiler alert, I didn't. And I'm also riding for 1 minute, so if the position was uncomfortable, which for me, it never was, I could probably suffer for 1 minute. Talking about saddles, Andy was very focused on saddle pressure mapping, and where I was sitting on the saddle, but it didn't seem to fix the problem. He moved the saddle forward, sat in the same position. He moved it back, and just the same thing. He did ask me how I was feeling, but he was very fixated on the saddle pressure mapping software. They even tried wider bars. Oh, and longer cranks, so from 165s to 172.5s. I think by the end of the fit, he said 165s were fine. There were things missed about my body, but instead of giving me advice about working on my body, he just made me upright. The issues didn't seem like they fixed them, and honestly, I felt like I was put into a cookie cutter position. Just like putting a plaster on, you may say, instead of fixing the problem. I asked about workouts or exercises to help with certain issues, and he didn't seem to tell me what to do, or if he had anyone that he'd recommend. Thinking about it, I don't think there's a video from Bicycle or James about off-the-bike workouts. Just fitting bikes to people, not optimising the body to be more efficient on the bike. I did ask if my bike was too big for me, and Andy did say yes. I asked about bikes that suited more towards me, and surprise, surprise, I was recommended endurance bikes, although I was cramped in the setup he put me in. I was told this was to reset my body from the aggressive setup I've been used to riding on. Bear in mind, in the drops, my knees hit my elbows, and the same thing in the arrowhead position. So I'm not sure what that really meant. I had a look at the bikes I was recommended because they had similar reach measurements to my current bike. I decided to have a detailed look at them when I got home for a comparison, but it didn't seem to add up or make sense. Even riding home on my road bike without the changes felt fine with no hand pressure. I decided to be open-minded about the changes and obviously change the parts that were needed. But riding the bike, it ended up just riding and feeling like trash. The posture felt very unnatural. Usually I ride with slightly bent arms, and riding out the saddle felt super upright. Oh, I forgot to tell you what was done to it as well. So originally I ran a 140 stem with 32cm handlebars and a Celitalia Watt saddle. The saddle was changed to a Pro Griffin, the stem was 90mm flipped, and the handlebars were 38cm, and long axle pedals. I understand there's an adjustment period to it, but I gave it some time and made my choice. I understand there's an adjustment period, but I gave it some time and made my choice. I ended up changing most things back, and apparently I wasn't the only one that has been put into a position like that, which didn't match their riding type. As I mentioned before, I understand they work on feedback during a fit, but you even said I was trying to ride like I was trying to ride lower, which is probably a sign to experiment more with a lower position, which the 1,000,001 adjustments he did, but a lot of changes were made, and I think they were a bit too radical for me. I ended up not going back. I think at the time they would have charged me to go back for a follow-up fit, so I thought I'd be better off doing the adjustments myself. However, they did reply to a written review, and they did say if there were any issues after the first fit, they wouldn't charge. But there was nothing saying that in the fit report. They did mention if there was any issues, contact them. But if I didn't like the position they put me in, I'm not sure if that would be an issue. Well, issue for me. I ended up going to a different fitter a few months later with much better results. Maybe I didn't go in as much detail with bicycle, but I gave as much detail as possible. And that's one thing I'd recommend when you get a bike fit. Expand your detail as much as you can. This was pasted from my Google review, which I added more detail on Trustpilot, which they should have read. Bear in mind, Andy did call me prior about my 1-star review before replying, and this was the reply. Atiba, we are deeply saddened to hear about how you felt about your fitting session. Your experience is not in line with many other clients who have visited us and is below our expectations. It is a shame that you did not reach us prior with writing this review. We do offer free of charge follow-up appointments should we not be able to address the issues in a single session. We understand that the body is complex and not all issues can be resolved in a 3-hour session. Whilst we appreciate your diagnostics of not fitting into the category of the majority of people not being able to ride an aggressive position, we'd suggest that the limited range of motion demonstrated in the physical assessment during the session, in addition to the reasons for the bike fit being booked initially, back pain after 20 minutes, amongst other issues, were likely related to the 12 cm plus a bar drop and excessive reach on your bike. To address these issues, we reduced the bar drop to 9 cm with small saddle height adjustment, and by increasing bar height, these changes reduce excessive frontal pressure as well as a reduction in reach. A 9 cm bar offset is still considered to be quite aggressive. Looking at your fit report, you could comfortably ride a Pinarello Dogma F, which is a multiple tour winning race frame, so we would disagree with your comments about us only fitting people to endurance bikes. For context, we've had many racers including former and world tour racers who've arrived with less aggressive setups seen on your bicycle, all whom demonstrated much higher physical range of motion. We've taken your feedback on board, and based on the phone call we had with you after this review, we've posted and amended our follow-up emails to include more information about follow-up services. Perhaps if this is clearer, then any disconsent would have been avoided. Thank you for bringing this to our attention, and we wish you the best and hope you continue to enjoy your riding. And yes, I had issues like back pain, for example, but I know from going to another fitter, this had nothing to do with my reach setup or bar to saddle drop, but making me upright didn't fix them and weren't the reason for them. 12 centimeters of bar to saddle drop, unfortunately, without factoring the rider, you've just stated a number. It's just like saying a saddle height of 70 centimeters, for example, is too high.
That doesn't mean anything.
Well, Tito said it, not me.
At no point was I recommended a Pinarello F or a bike of a similar geometry. Just endurance bikes. I could go on and on about this, but as you could see, I didn't like the reply they gave to me. So a few weeks later, I tagged Bicycle, James and Andy on an Instagram story with a picture of me on my track bike saying, "Not bad for someone with poor flexibility." This got me blocked by James on Instagram. I also got blocked by them on Facebook for reviewing my options as well. So if you want to be treated like that after you weren't happy with your service, are they still the place to go? Would I recommend getting a fit by Bicycle? Well, you know my answer. But if you want an upright position, or your Teo, possibly. But not everyone requires an upright setup, and I'm one of those people. I would go to a fitter that's more open-minded than thinking everyone should be riding an endurance bike, because bike fitting is very individual, and upright doesn't always equal to comfort. It's more complicated than that. And that was my review on Bicycle Richmond. I hope you stuck with me for that one. If you enjoyed the video, give me a like. What's your opinions on Bicycle after my review? Have you had issues with them? Because I'd like to know, as I'm definitely not the only one on this one. So let me know in the comments. And don't forget to subscribe, because there is a very high chance that James is going to block me now on YouTube.